Are in Act Two of the play. We're reading Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, and we've arrived at the second part, the second act. And where are we in the story? Well, where the place is the wood outside Athens, so the forest. We're now in the wilderness, away from the law and the polite habits of civil society. And we meet the final rank of the players in this story. There are four ranks from the lowest, the working people who are practicing their play, the ordinary Athenians, the Duke of Athens, the demigod, the half-divine creature, Theseus and his half-divine fiancée, soon-to-be wife, Hippolyta, and now, finally, the people we meet here, Oberon, the king of the fairies, Titania, his queen. So these are great powers in the universe of this play. And Oberon's servant, Puck, who is also called Robin Goodfellow, who is a figure more of English folk religion than the Greek theology. Shakespeare set the play in ancient Athens, and he borrowed the myths and legends and some of the things from the religion of that time and place, but mixed it up with common elements of English religion, sort of on the low end, away from their advanced and official theology, place where tradition and nature worship and superstition survive in parallel with the official religion. So there's no Christianity in this play, but there is English religion, and it meets with a certain version of the Greek religion. That's what we see here as Act Two begins. But where are we in the events of the story? Almost everyone has decided for separate reasons to go to this forest. So Lysander and Hermia are in love, but in a difficult position because though they love each other, her father does not give permission for the marriage and wants his daughter to marry another young man. And Hermia and Lysander decide that if they can't have what they want in Athens, they will run away and get out of Athens, where they're not under control of the Athenian law, the sharp Athenian law, as it's called in the play. So they have gone out to the forest in order to escape. And they have a plan to get away to Lysander's grandmother, who will look after them and allow them to be married, and they'll have their future that way. But they get lost in the woods. They're there in the dark. And so they remain during the night in the woods. Now, Helena is desperately in love with Demetrius, the young man who is, according to the law and according to Aegeus, Hermias' father, the young man who is supposed to marry Hermia rather than the man that Hermia loves. So Helena, who is desperately in love with Demetrius, does a desperate thing. She's satisfied if only she can get to be in his presence and to look at him under whatever circumstances. So she tells him about the plan of Hermia and Lysander, because then she knows what he'll do, and she can go with him. He will go chasing into the forest to try to stop them, and she will be able to follow him and spend a little bit of time with the man that she loves. And in her state, that seems a good plan and worth it to her. So Hermia and Lysander have run off to the woods to go off and get married and have gotten lost and stuck there. Demetrius is trying to protect what he thinks of his right, that he has the right to marry Hermia because he's got her father's approval. So he goes out to the forest. Helena goes out to the forest because she'll go wherever Demetrius goes. And the workers of Athens, the lowest rank, They are putting on a play. They want to rehearse their play somewhere where they won't be spied on. They don't want anyone stealing their ideas. So they've gone to the forest so they can get away from the crowded city of Athens. They are out there too, and the divine creatures that we meet first are naturally in the woods. They belong more in the forest than they do in the city. They, it seems, can be anywhere in the world. And then Titania has just come back from India. They can be anywhere in the world, but they have come to the area around Athens because both Oberon and Titania have kind of investment in models. This is part of in moral mortals, that is. They're attached to human people. This is part of the Greek religion that the gods sometimes fall in love with mortal people. And so Oberon has a kind of a thing for Hippolyta and has come to bless her marriage. And Titania has apparently the same sort of thing for Theseus and follows him throughout his life and looks after him. And the two of them independently have come to look out after the marriage that they want, since they have some kind of feeling for these half-divine mortals at the top of Athenian society. They want to bless their marriage. So that's where we are. We're in the wilderness, and that's where everyone is, and that's where the story, more metaphorically, is at. That everyone comes to the woods for different reasons, and we are beginning to see what develops from that situation. Oberon, as the king and the fairies, has access to certain love potions that can make anyone fall in love with anyone or anything, and also the antidote that can make people fall back out of love, and that will generate the action for the middle acts. Here at the beginning of Act 2, we meet Puck, who's an important character, and somewhat in the middle, he's the servant of Oberon, who's the king of the fairies. So the highest of all the high characters is Oberon, who controls and in as much as he can, controls the highest realm, the magical realm, the natural realm. He's the one who makes things happen. He does not have absolute power. So the theology of this play is not like monotheism, where God just controls everything. And part of his limitation is that there are other gods, in particular the goddess Titania, who is his sometimes wife there. They live outside of the human law, so that they're somewhat distant from one another. They're a couple, but they're not controlled by any set hierarchy the way the law controls us. And puts fathers in charge of mothers and the rest of the family, and forces a kind of regularity on things. That's the way human life works, or from the opinion of this play, ought to work, even though humans don't conform to it. We saw that in the first scene. The Hermia doesn't want to do what her father tells her to do. But humans have a law that impose a hierarchy, but the gods do not have that law, and the king and queen of the gods are somewhat distant from each other, and they're not getting along. And this is somehow the highest level of this play. The world is sort of out of sorts and going wrong, and the parts aren't agreeing. And what we see, because this is a work of art, we can see the highest powers acting and seeing some of their motives, see the things that explain what we usually experience. But of course, in real life, we just experience it. Sometimes things seem in tune and going along well, and sometimes they're out of tune and disasters are happening. And we speculate about what the great powers are doing to be in harmony or out of harmony. but we don't know. But this play accepts this view, a kind of folk religion view. It's not endorsed by our more advanced society, the Christianity of Shakespeare's day, or our monotheisms these days. This understanding of religion is not enforced by our more advanced theology. But in the England of Shakespeare's day, people believed it, and of course, right here and now, people also take their religion on these two levels. And why do people go to the mosque to pray on Friday and also have a little the little bad eye medallion on the grill of their car? There's clearly living two different religions at once, and Shakespeare understands this about people and has created this play to show that superstitious or the folk religion aspect of our beliefs by making Puck real and showing us Oberon and Titania and the whole realm of fairies that normally we believe in and we try to understand, but that we never get settled beliefs about it because they're invisible to us as the fairies are, as Oberon is in this play. Now we meet in this first scene Puck and a fairy. The fairy doesn't come back. Is here to help us understand Puck and who he is. Puck is also known as Robin Goodfellow with these important powers. You don't want to speak badly of them. You don't want to insult them. You never know if you make them angry what might happen. So Puck is his name, but that's a little rude and familiar, and so you call him Robin Goodfellow, a nice name. But the fairy introduces him as having the role that folk religion says he has. Here on the second page of Act 2, Scene 1, so page 18. We see the fairy. Who is Puck? He's the one who you will bootless make the breathless huss of churn. So the housewife, it's just some wife and mother who works on a farm, works in the kitchen, and it's her job to turn the cream into butter. That's a kind of miraculous transformation. Of course, it's not miraculous. It happens every day. It's perfectly normal. But it's miraculous in the sense that the cream and the butter are different from one another. And we wouldn't guess that could happen if experience didn't show us that it did. You have cream. If you shake it up enough, then you get butter. And it goes from one thing to another. And a similar thing, line 38. And sometimes make the drink to bear no bar. Right? So if you crush apples, you get an apple juice called sweet cider, and it turns into hard cider. It becomes an alcoholic drink. Something similar happens with beer. You boil up grain and water into a kind of porridge like oatmeal that you might have for breakfast, and you let that sit out, and it becomes something completely different, a very ordinary thing. The juice of an apple, or a little a bit of wheat or barley or oats and boiled in water, the dullest possible food becomes beer with a strange power to make you drunk and make all sorts of bad things happen, or to alter your reality, to bring joy and make good or romantic things happen. So life contains these small miracles, but one thing about them, sometimes they don't happen. So the breathless housewife, she shakes and shakes and shakes, and the cream, for whatever reason, just doesn't turn into butter. This happens. Or you do the same thing with the beer or the cider that you always do, and you wait for the magic, and the magic doesn't happen. And in life, we just have no explanation for those things. We see it usually does, but sometimes it doesn't. We can't say why, and then our explanation is that well, perhaps there's a fairy, there's a magical realm where somebody does or doesn't let this happen. And this play makes that real. This Puck is that guy.